I am decidedly not Gerard Gibbert. Richard Cross in for Gerard today in the Element Wealth studio. What are you thinking, or are you thinking about planning a retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or give them a call at 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantee. C-Spire text line is open, 601-879-4395. We remind you, please don't text and drive. Excited to welcome Senator David Parker. He represents District 2. That's DeSoto County in northwest Mississippi. He's got his new committee assignments. He is the chair of the Senate Accountability, Efficiency, and Transparency Committee, and he's in studio with us today in the big chair. Senator Parker, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Richard. On a day dominated by federal politics and news, it's nice for you to probably get a little break from that and talk a little bit of state policy.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about that. So let's start with this new committee of which you are chair, Accountability, Efficiency, and Transparency. What's the primary role of that committee and your job as chair of the committee?
Well, I think we all call it AET, and you've given the correct name for it, but I think you could also call it additional education and thought,
okay.
Because I believe most of the bills that come to AET are those kind of bills, the ones that do not have a solid solution, just like a yes/no type of question. They're policy that requires, greater thought and greater debate. And, to get things right, I think the AET committee, passes less legislation than many of the committees. But at the end of the day, we try to get it right as we move things through the process.
I was going to say, does that make it more difficult to get things done if there are more complex issues where there's not just a definitive this is right, this is wrong?
Well, I think that's the reason why AET has the history of some people calling it the killing committee. When you have a number of bills that have that level of complexity to them, there's no way you're going to pass, bill upon bill upon bill out of a committee that requires, additional education and thought. You're going to have to selectively find the ones that are ready, for the process, and continue to look at ones that are not ready for prime time, so to speak.
Who makes the decision as to whether or not a bill comes to your committee?
A lieutenant governor.
Okay, so that is the lieutenant governor. So if there is a bill that comes out of a different committee where he thinks there is a question as to whether or not it needs to be looked at more closely, that's when it gets sent to you?
Well, he will make, any bill that's introduced by the Senate, he will make his referrals,
okay.
And they will go to the committees that he selects at that time. He can select it to go to one committee. Sometimes he'll select a bill to go to two. And I think just during the process, if you see a bill go to more than one committee, it either has controversy in it or it has a very small chance of passing. If you see one get triple referred, it's on life support at the point of introduction. So, I think a few of them end up AET that are just strictly to AET, and then some end up in AET that are, going more than one place.
I feel like there's one issue in particular that a lot of people are fascinated by and think is important, and that's the ballot initiative process. Last couple of years, the House and the Senate were not able to agree, at least is my understanding, on getting a new ballot initiative process passed. You've talked about this a little bit. You've been quoted about it a little bit, with maybe outside interest kind of trying to influence the way things might go to that process. Give us an update on where that is, how important it is in your mind to get something passed that gives us a true roadmap for ballot initiative.
Well, I think if you look at the history of the ballot initiative, we've had this as discussion not just back to 1991 or so, but it goes back to 1914, when we first put an initiative and referendum, and into the process. And what happened on that is by 1917, there were already challenges. There were things that were coming up with it that were producing problems. The first one had to do with the fish and gaming industry, and so there were initial rulings by the Supreme Court. Then there was another ruling by that basically overturned it. And the ballot initiative, as we saw it, basically kind of just hovered around, from about 1920 until 1991. And then in 1991, when some candidates running for office had a platform that involved the lottery, they decided to reawaken that process. And so what we've had, as a process since then was shaped really by one policy and that need or desire to get that one policy onto the ballot. And I don't think that that's what people who voted for a ballot initiative want to see. I don't think they want to see one issue, that is the big one that's being pushed to kind of get through that, that could come from, thoughts of people within our state or could come from thoughts from people outside our state, and so whatever we do with this process, if I'm one of those who's making any kind of decision on where this might go, we just got to do this right, or we're going to end up back in court again, like we've been I think, pushing a half dozen times already since 1914.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. I don't live in this world on a daily basis, certainly like you do, but the two biggest kind of recent issues that have been ballot initiative questions, didn't we have that issue when we were having flag discussions and then also with marijuana legalization, or at least parts of that process? Are those the two big ones most recently?
Well, we also had Initiative 42, which had to do with the MAP funding formula. I think probably during my short time in the Senate, the two that have popped up have been Initiative 42 regarding MAP, and then the marijuana referendum that passed. The one regarding the state flag was much before my time of service.
Okay. All right, so let me just ask you point blank, how important is it for the citizens of Mississippi to have a vehicle for there to be a ballot initiative that is clear, that is straightforward, that is understandable, and ultimately, if all of the boxes are checked along the way, gives the option to have something go on the ballot for the state, the citizens of the state to actually decide on?
Well, the important thing is, to your point, yes, all those things are important, but at the same time, we want to make sure that whoever's voting on something really knows what they're voting on. And so in the process, there are 26 states that have a referendum or initiative type of process. Mm-hmm. And of those, 16 of the 26 have a single item type of policy on there where it makes it more transparent in the sense of what am I actually voting on. For example, the marijuana initiative, it had numerous provisions in there that affected a lot of different avenues of state government that I don't think the majority of people voting on the question really understood all of the ramifications of it. So when I vote on something, I want to know exactly what I'm voting for, and I also think that, sometimes by putting it in the Constitution, we can make severe errors if we don't do things right. And you can't pull something out of the Constitution very easily. And so we want to be sure whatever we do, we're making sure that we're doing it the correct way.
You want to be able to avoid gotcha wording for an initiative?
Right.
Is that a good way to describe it?
Yeah, gotcha wording or, just, getting back to the name of the committee, accountability, efficiency, and transparency. I think transparency is the key word in the committee that I'm going to serve on. And John Polk has been a dear friend of mine for many years. I've told him I hope to be able to do half the job that he did as the lead of AET, over the years. But that key word in our committee is transparency. And in any and every decision that I'm tasked to try to make, I'm going to make sure we're transparent to the voters and whoever is being pushed to make a decision.
Visiting with Senator David Parker, represents the 2nd District in Mississippi, that is DeSoto County. We had Ryan Miller and Courtney Taylor on earlier today from Accelerate Mississippi, and they made reference to the fact that you were over the Workforce Committee in previous sessions. One of the things that I talked with them about, and I may have gotten bogged down a little bit unintentionally, was kind of the role of workforce development in conjunction with MDA. With your work with workforce development, how do you see those things kind of intersecting and intertwining?
Well, I'll say first that I think Ryan and his team are doing an excellent job. Mm-hmm. When at the beginning of last session, when I sat down with Lieutenant Governor, we did not have an Office of Workforce Development. we did not have a lead for Office of Workforce Development. And the person who was supposedly in charge did not understand workforce development at the time.
Not a good plan.
And so, but we were able to, get Ryan, and Ryan has come to his role with a blank whiteboard of decision-making abilities as far as how to do things. And one thing that I saw happen when we had our last large economic development project involving the steel industry in the Starkville area, I believe it was last session or so, one of the first things I asked Ryan and his team was, did MDA...
Senator, I'm gonna interrupt you just for... Have you got time to hang through the break for one more segment? Good.
Absolutely.
Let's pick this conversation up. I think this is important. We'll do that when we come back visiting with the Senator from DeSoto County, David Parker. We are in the Element Wealth studio. This is Middays on SuperTalk Mississippi. We're back with you right after this. Wealth studio. We're joined by Senator David Parker, who represents District 2 in DeSoto County. Thanks for hanging with us for one more segment. We were talking about workforce development, your role in that committee, and I think you were referencing the economic development project in the Golden Triangle area as it pertains to steel before we went to the break.
Right, and so when we had that project come to our attention, one of the first questions I had for Ryan and his team was, had MDA pulled you into the process of, this plan and what's going to be happening with this major investment in our state? And at that time, their office really was still kind of finding their feet and kind of finding their location, and so they really weren't involved. And the important thing there that we missed out on is that when we have a new company come into the state that's offering some high-paying jobs, we have a duty to try to find that company the workers that are needed for those jobs. But we also need a plan for some of the surrounding industries and businesses that could possibly be losing workers to the new industry that's coming there. And I think that's what the Office of Workforce Development is all about. It's not just planning and helping MDA with these, whale or the very, very large projects, but it's allowing through Inflex and other things we've worked on the last 4 years to allow businesses to expand and to let the employers know that, hey, we're going to have you an educated workforce, not just today, but for generations to come, so that you can continue your business and not just start it in our state.
And isn't that one of the offshoots of economic development that maybe doesn't get talked as much about? I would go back to Toyota when it came to the Blue Springs area, Pontotoc, Union, Lee counties, the Pole Alliance, and all that was involved with that. Okay, Toyota's coming, and that's fantastic. It's going to create a ton of jobs, but all the suppliers that subsequently came because of the need to be close to that Toyota manufacturing facility, I mean, it's almost incalculable how much that has meant in terms of additional jobs, additional tax base, good-paying jobs, and all those things.
Right, and I'm excited. The new plant that's going to be located in Marshall County it's 1 county away from DeSoto County.
Right.
And what we have in DeSoto County is we have a distribution city, a distribution center, centered around UPS and FedEx. And so a lot of our business and industry is kind of centered around that model. But when you do add your manufacturing model, they are a natural partner, in my opinion, to the distribution model. So the more and more of these manufacturing partners we can have locate in and around the state, they create extra incentives for us. And even the Ford new electric vehicle plant, the plant that's up in Tennessee, it's interesting that they put that type of facility there. Well, they're going to need supplies, and they're going to need things like batteries and other things like that. And so you see natural partners kind of, cohabitate together, and I think that's exciting for our state.
Senator Parker, you're also vice chair on the Public Health and Welfare Committee on the Senate side. What's the most pressing issue on that front? We've got a hearing, I think, tomorrow on mental health. Mental health continues to be one of the things that, we need to put more attention, need to put more just kind of a spotlight on that. I don't think that we have certainly reached our goals, and being where we want to be there. So I look forward to having some conversations on. We actually have a joint public health hearing tomorrow between the House and Senate, I believe, regarding mental health. So be interested to see what that dialogue brings into this session. And Brian chairing that on the Senate side, and then Sam Creekmore on the House side is the chair of that committee as well, right?
Yeah, Sam is, I've had a chance to work with him over the last 4 years as he's, come into his role in the House. And he's a good man. He's a good, confident thinker, and he's, I think he's going to do a very, very good job in that new role that the Speaker gave him.
Yeah, it was interesting. We, our show in the afternoon, Sports Talk Mississippi, we were in New Albany a few months back, and Sam was on with us, and you can tell, I guess I filled in for Paul that day, and there is a very real passion and an understanding, I think, for what needs to happen on the mental health side of things.
Yeah, and people ask sometimes, why are committees and chairmen adjusted over time? And when I started, of course, my first term, I didn't, I came in as a special election, just kind of figuring out where I was. But I spent a lot of time on the DUI law, and then I moved to Veterans Affairs, and I worked very hard on veteran and military affairs issues for 4 years. And this past session, economic development and workforce, working on Inflex and our economic development. And so I think when you move new people into new roles, they bring their own mode of thinking, and it's exciting when you have different backgrounds giving issues thought than just the same, kind of opinion that kind of resonates each year.
So certainly the lieutenant governor sets the agenda for the Senate, and the things that are important to him are going to be the things that are kind of take priority during a given session. But what about for you individually? Beyond just, yes, going with the direction of the lieutenant governor wants to go, what's in your mind really important right now for the Senate side of things to tackle and to be looking at, whether it's getting new legislation this session or saying, look, over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, this is an area we really need to be focused, and maybe you just kind of start laying the groundwork this year for something that happens 2, 3, 4 years down the line?
Well, I'll say, last year I spent a good part of the session on the Jackson water situation. Yeah. We did not get a solution to that. I'm continuing to work on that. I plan to introduce legislation again this year, to try to find a future governance model to use those resources from the feds that have come in, not just in the immediate need, but to, kind of put the governance there for the future so that when these problems are repaired, that we have accountability and we have transparency in how that system is going to work for years to come. I think that's one of our most important things in this area. And so I look forward to working on that again this year.
How hard is that in terms of developing the right strategy between local governance and state governance over what a lot would look at as a local issue, but others would be like, no, this is more than just a local issue if it happens repeatedly and can't be fixed in a reasonable manner?
So up in DeSoto County, we have what's called DECRUA, which is the DeSoto County Rural Utility Association. And so the proposal that we have for Jackson is MCRUA. We have just similar, so it's a regional meeting of minds or ratepayers, so that you can make decisions that are right for a region instead of just, one municipality or one area that has a service need. And so we've had a lot of discussions on that. I look forward to more discussions this year as we move into the session. But that's another thing to how we started our segment, about giving each and every issue the careful education and thought and the attention that's needed. The non-traditional AET, of giving it thought, I think is what I hope to bring to the table on this and many other issues.
Do you sense a willingness with leadership in the city of Jackson to work? I mean, understanding, okay, this is a problem that has to be fixed. And while we might love to fix it on our own, we can't do that. Is there a willingness to accept that reality and say, okay, let's bring a bunch of minds together and see if we can get this right, where it's not only fixed with a patch today, but we actually have a process going forward?
Yeah. Well, I think going forward, each and every, area that has interest in this is going to want to have the proper representation to kind of know that they have ears in the room when decisions are being made. And so on the policy that I proposed last year, the city mayor would get 4 appointments to to this new board. Then we set this utility board. The governor would get 3, and lieutenant governor would get 2. So you'd have a 9-member board. each and every one of those leaders would have input through the appointments that they make, and each one of those appointees would have to be confirmed, to be put on the board. So we're allowing that input to go across all of the to your point, the levels of government, so that we get the input from each and every area that's so necessary to fix a need like that.
Visiting with Senator David Parker, wrapping up our time together, we have heard that there is a possibility that there is more good economic development news for the state of Mississippi that is on the way. Do we just have to stay tuned for that, or is there any light that you can shine, perhaps?
I'd say the rumors have been very strong, and so, I would expect maybe if there's going to be an announcement, I would expect it, fairly soon. But this is all part of moving Mississippi forward, and with back to Ryan Miller and his team, when they set up the name Accelerate, Accelerate is what we want to do. We want to put put our foot down, accelerate the needle, make Mississippi a better and stronger place for the people who grow up here to want to stay here and to raise a family and be proud of our state.
And also for new people to come here and call this their home as well. Senator Parker, thank you so much for your time today. Great visiting, and I hope we can catch up again soon.
Thank you, Richard. Enjoy.
Senator David Parker, District 2 from DeSoto County. A lot on his plate as just a couple of weeks into a new legislative session. We'll take a time out. We got more coming up. Half an hour of middays on SuperTalk Mississippi left with you in the Element Wealth Studio.